Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to be taking you guys back to the year in 2009 to look at Neil Blomkamps Sci Fi action thriller District 9. So let's get into the helicopter, let's go to District 9, let's play you guys a trailer, and I'll see you soon.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
It's going to be quick. It's going to be clean. Best of all, it's going to be quiet.
There's a lot of secrets in District 9.
And welcome back guys. So the synopsis for this film is: violence escalates after an extraterrestrial race is forced to live in slum-like conditions on Earth. But they find a kindred spirit in a government agent exposed to their biotechnology. It's got a 112-minute runtime and it's classed as a action sci-fi thriller. The film was directed by Neil Blomkamps and he is a South African film director. He's also a producer, screenwriter and animator, and he is known for employing a documentary style, sort of handheld, almost found footage approach to his directing. And after the success of this movie, he went on to go and make another sci-fi movie called Elysium with Matt Damon, which kind of has a similar sort of theme. It's that sort of realistic sort of documentary approach. He went on to go and make Chappie. He's also created Oat Studios, who have made a number of short movies, sci-fi horror movies, which if you haven't seen, go and check them out. They are really good. They're really good for any sci-fi horror fan. And he also had plans to reboot the Aliens franchise straight after the 1987 Aliens movie and basically abolish the story after that with Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, and then recreate it all with Ripley and Hicks actually Hicks surviving after Aliens and then going on a xenomorph adventure, I guess you could say, with Newt and Bishop. And I think this would probably actually be the film that we all wanted back at that time as well, because I really wanted Hicks to come back for Alien 3, and I think Blomkamp was probably the right bloke for the job. I think he's the right guy for this job. So it's one of those things where I think I will be forever in wonder now to see what he would have done with that. But there's actual concept art on the internet. If you have a look on there, you actually see pictures of Hicks with his scarred face with the alien acid and all that. Looks really good. But unfortunately, this project got put back on the shelf by the main man himself, Ridley Scott. He came back onto the directing chair and he made Alien Covenant because he wanted to tell more of the story in his way, and he thought that the Neil Blomkamp reboot would possibly interfere with this universe. So it only got as far as concept art, I believe, and the other project I think he was working on as well, Mr. Blomkamp, is RoboCop. He was looking at doing a RoboCop reboot. But after talking about his reboots, as much as I think he would be really good at doing, you know, an Aliens movie or RoboCop movie, I don't see why he needs to do that, if I'm honest with you. I think that looking at his Oak Studios work, his short movies, especially Firebase and Zygote, I think he made about 5 shorts. They're only about 30 minutes long, might be a little bit shorter than that, but they look really good and they look like original stories. So I'm thinking, rather than just do a reboot, why don't you just go back and make some original work? Although, let me just rephrase that. I know I said original. I mean, a lot of this stuff today isn't. It's difficult to try and make something original. I appreciate that, but I thought that District 9 was a fresh telling of a story that kind of probably already been told in the sci-fi world. But I thought that he had a really good signature to it. It felt fresh. It felt gritty. It felt like the stuff that I'd seen back in the 80s, and obviously Peter Jackson is attached to this, and you can sort of see a bit of the old Peter Jackson signature there, especially with his early stuff such as Bad Taste and Brain Dead. It's like really sort of gritty stuff. And I'm a real big fan of this director so far, Neil Blomkamp. I'm surprised we haven't seen anything more of him, to be honest with you, because of that sort of fresh grittiness that he's brought so far to the cinema. I could certainly see him do something in the world of the 2000 AD franchise. I could probably see him do a Dread movie or Robo Hunt or the ABC Warriors or something like that, because when I watched District 9, I felt like he was sort of getting into the world of that sort of sci-fi 2000 AD type genre. And in actual fact, talking about 2000 AD comic, they used to have a story every week called Tharg's Future Shock, and this is what kind of reminded me, certainly District 9, of that type of story where you'd have someone who get contaminated with alien DNA and get turned into an alien, only a bit like a short story, and that's the type of thing that you would have in the comic. So that's kind of what reminded me of that. So, but going back to the movie, how it was made and all that, I spoke about Peter Jackson. Now, he was the producer of this film. If it wasn't for Peter Jackson, this film would have been made, and I'll explain why. So originally Peter Jackson wanted to make a Halo film, which is based on the very successful Xbox game franchise. And Peter Jackson hired Neil Blomkamp to direct the film, but unfortunately it all fell through. It didn't work out. They couldn't get it on board. So as a result, Peter Jackson was impressed with Neil Blomkamp's work, and he said, look, here's $30 million, go and make a film. And with that $30 million, Neil Blomkamp, he made District 9, and it was a successful film, and it did really well at the box office. It made $210 million. And then, like I said earlier, he went on to go and make Elysium, and then he wanted to go and make Chappie, which has still got that sort of that same sort of District 9 signature. It's got robots. It's got robots with graffiti on it. It's really gritty. It's probably how the future would be for us, I would say, with technology and that. It's got like a real sort of like real sort of dirty sci-fi look about it. Nothing's really clean cut, which again, it's that signature thing. So yeah, I'm a fan of his work. I like it, and I'm surprised he hasn't done any more stuff. I hope he will. I'm hoping to see more stuff from this director. But let's go on to the cast. Let's talk about the cast in this movie. There's no one really famous in this film. No big A-list stars or anything like that. But the main lead protagonist in this film is Sharlto Copley, who plays Wickus, and this is his first acting role. In fact, he's never done any acting before. He's actually just a friend of Neil Blomkamp. They worked together in the early days, going back to college when they were in South Africa. And they both worked on 3D animation together up until the production of this movie, where Sharlto Copley was invited to do like a screen test, and apparently just blew it out of the water. They loved him. They just thought he was the right guy for the role. And for me, his character works for the movie. He's just got a sort of innocence about him. He's not in control of anything. He's well out of his depth, and I guess because Sharlto didn't have any acting experience, I guess you're just getting him as a person in this, just being himself. But it does work, and I'll get into that later on with the review. But he's done really well for himself, because he's since gone on to go and star in the other films. Elysium, Chappie, he starred in the A-Team, so he's done well for himself. But talking about the character Wickes, he did remind me of another character, funny enough, from a Peter Jackson film. It's funny how Peter Jackson is tied to this film, but I couldn't find any Easter eggs or tie-in with this. Just something I'd noticed myself is Peter Jackson's Brain Dead movie. Now you've got the character Lionel in that. He's the lead protagonist, and he is a similar sort of character as Wickes. You know, he's a little bit out of his depth. He's a nice guy. He's a little bit naive and all that sort of stuff. And he kind of goes through the similar sort of events, probably more harsh in Brain Dead, I would say. But he's a tank top wearing, similar looking guy. So it's just something that I picked up on watching District 9. So I don't think it's a deliberate tie-in between the directors, but it's just something that I noticed there. So there you go. It's a bit of trivia that isn't trivia. So that's pretty much the production of District 9. One thing I will mention before I do the review is the composer and the soundtrack for this film. So it's composed by Clinton Shorter, who is a Canadian and television composer, and he worked with Kwaito, which is a music genre that emerged in Johannesburg in South Africa during the 1990s, and they did a variant of hip-hop, house music, featuring African sounds and samples. And working with this group, they developed deep bass lines, percussive loop samples and rap, so it kind of adds to the tone of this movie. So I always like to shout out the composer and the music to these films, which I think is, again, I've mentioned this before, it's like it's an important part to a movie, I think, the music. So there you go, guys. So there you go, that's the production of the movie. So let's have a look at a bite-sized review of District 9. So the film starts in 1982, and you've got a giant extraterrestrial spaceship that arrives and hovers over South Africa, and the film starts off almost like a documentary of people talking about the arrival. You've got scientists, you've got the press, you've got people talking about it, you've got people on the streets talking about the arrival of the spaceship. And a investigation team finds over 1 million malnourished aliens on board this spaceship. So you've got first contact, but you've got friendly aliens. And they get relocated to a camp in Johannesburg called District 9. But over the years it turns into a slum, and all of the locals, or most of the locals, are complaining about the alien slum, and it's just become a point now where you've had the first contact, well, we found aliens, but now people just want them to leave and go. So in order to relocate the aliens, the government hires Multinational United, and they are a huge weapons manufacturer, and they help relocate the aliens to a new camp outside the city. And running this is Pet Smith. He's a MNU executive, and he employs his employee's son-in-law, Wickes van der Meer. So, I mean, this is Sharlto Copley in his best tank top and moustache, and he is just pure naivety, I guess. You know, he's going in with these troops armed up with guns and helicopters and aliens and all that, and there you got him, Wickes, just running around with his little clipboard, telling these aliens, which are now called prawns, that you're now evicted. And it's just comedy gold in a way with this sci-fi movie, and I think it's just what it makes it great. It just adds to that movie, just adds to the movie, just and this is where the film also becomes like a found footage movie, because along the way, whilst Wickes is walking around the alien camp, he is talking into a camera. I think it's the press, and he's talking about the camp, he's talking about the aliens, talking about the eviction. And so at this point he mentions about I think it's dog food or cat food. It's something that the aliens like eating. That's like gold to them. That is their form of currency almost in the camp. And they also have weapons which are from the spaceship, which can only be used by the prawns, or the aliens is what they call them. And it can't be activated by human hands. It can only be activated by aliens' hands, which is kind of like one of the side plots to the movie. So in the meantime, you now got 3 aliens called Christopher Johnson, his young son CJ, and his friend Paul, who are searching the district for a canister, and they're basically making some fuel to activate the pilot ship to get up to the main mothership. And they get a knock on the door, and it is Wickers trying to evict them. And Wickers comes into the shack, and he's serving the eviction notice, and he's searching the shack for any weapons. And he comes across this canister, Wickers, and he's toying around with it. He's talking into the camera, and he activates it, and then this liquid sprays into his face. It's quite a funny scene because it's like he's gone, "Did you get that on camera?" He's talking to the cameraman. He sort of shoves the camera out of the way and says, re-edit that, and he's like wiping his face, and he comes back on and he's sort of like joking and saying, "Oh well, you know, back with the eviction." And then Christopher and his son CJ, along with his friend Paul, they get evicted, and then this is where you meet a cruel MNU mercenary called Cobus Venter, and he kills Paul with like a sniper rifle from a helicopter. And then so the first day of eviction wraps up, and Wickers goes home, and he gets home to a surprise birthday party. But as he walks through the door, it's quite a funny scene actually, because he's walked through the front door, the lights are off, he's talking to his fiancée, his very beautiful fiancée, and he says, "Oh hi honey, I've got to run to the toilet because I think I'm going to crap my pants." And then as he runs through into the main room, it's like, surprise, his whole family's there. But he's feeling sick for a reason, because he is now slowly starting to turn into an alien, and the first part of this transformation is with his hand. He cuts his hand, and then when he takes off the bandages, he has an alien hand. And as a result of this transformation, he is then taken to a MNU lab for testing, because he now has the ability to use the prawns' weapons, because he now has an alien hand. And they see this as an option, and you get a scene here where it's quite a quotable scene actually. It's a scene which a lot of people talk about, especially when I mention the film, you know, the District 9 movie, and I say, you know, District 9, and people say, "Oh yeah, I'll shoot the people, I won't shoot the prawn." And like you say, you get this scene now where he is being tested with the weapons. They put a weapon in his hand, and they try to work out whether the weapon will actually shoot an alien. And so you've got an alien and a pig, and like I say, that's where he comes out with that classic line, and they make him shoot an alien, so now they know that he can actually use these weapons. So now he has become very vital to the MNU for their research and plans, and being able to use these alien weapons. And so now the MNU want to use his body, and the person in charge of this is actually his father-in-law, who's running the company, Schmidt. And Wickers catches light on this. He knows he's in danger, so he manages to escape the lab. Now he's on the run. And it's actually, again, his father-in-law. He's put out a story to the news to broadcast that Wickers is now almost like a sort of criminal at large, and they've made up some false news about him, saying that he's actually been interacting with the aliens in a sort of sexual way, and they put some dirt on him, which is all untrue. But now his fiance's found out about it. It's quite sad actually, because he's kind of lost his life, poor old Wickers. You know, his fiancée doesn't want anything to do with him. He's turning into an alien, so things have gone really bad. And to make things even worse, he is now being hunted down by the cruel MNU mercenary Cobus Venter in his helicopter and sniper rifle. So now, as a fugitive at large, Wickes takes refuge in District 9 and he manages to find Christopher, the guy or the alien that he evicted. And Christopher tells him that underneath his house is actually a command module dropship which will enable them to get back to the mothership. And what he tells him is that if he helps him find the fuel which has been confiscated by the MNU, which they have in their lab, he will be able to get back to the mothership, and this would enable him to return back to a human being because they have all the equipment up there to reverse the process. So after obtaining some weapons from a Nigerian arms dealer in District 9, Wickes and Christopher force their way into the MNU lab and manage to retrieve the fuel. And you get a pretty cool scene here, good action scene between them with the actual weapons. They look like they've just come out from a first person shoot 'em up sci-fi game, so you would get a really good action scene here. And then after retrieving the fuel, they go back to District 9 and they go to the dropship, and they're flying back to the mothership, and this is where Christopher tells Wickes that he has to return back to his home planet, and it's going to take him 3 years to return back to Earth with the cure. And then Wickes gets raged by this. He tries to take command of the ship himself, but then they get shot down by Ventus, the MNU mercenary, and the ship crashes and they get captured by the mercenaries. But then you get an ambush from the gangs who supply the guns in District 9, and they're having a fight with the MNU. And then whilst all this is happening, Christopher's son takes control of the dropship and he activates the main mothership, and he also activates an exosuit or something. It's a bit like a transformer, and this is where Wickes gets into this suit and he starts using it to retaliate against the gang in the MNU, and he also rescues Christopher from this gang. And he manages to get Christopher back to the dropship with his son, and he's fending off the MNU. And Christopher says to him, "Look, I'll be back in 3 years, I promise, to cure you." He goes off in the ship, and like Wickes is left in this suit, and you get really good, again, it's a good action scene here where he's like fighting off the gangs in the MNU. You get some like crossfire, you get some missiles, you get some, like I say, some incredible action shots here, and it's all CGI. It's really good CGI, I thought. But Ventus, the main mercenary, finally cripples Wickes in this suit. But before he can kill Wickes, the other aliens in the camp come to his rescue and they mutilate Ventus. And this is like the final scene for him. He is torn to pieces. And then whilst all this is happening, Chris and CJ, they manage to get back to the mothership, and it activates and it takes off and leaves the Earth. And then going back to District 9, all the aliens are then taken to a new camp which is called District 10. And then the way the film ends is with Wickes, who's been totally transformed into an alien. He's left in the camp, but then he leaves his wife a flower. It's a metal flower on her doorstep, and it gives her hope that Wickes is still alive. And that is it, guys. That is how the film ends. So it kind of leaves it open for a sequel, which I think Neil Blomkamp's been talking about for a while. But we will just have to wait and see. Does it need a sequel? I'm not sure whether this film really needs a sequel, to be honest with you. I think it's just a really good standalone film. It does everything it needs to do, and I always think the sequel here is just open to your imagination, really. It can be whatever you want it to be. So there you go, guys. That is District 9. I think it's a good film. It's gritty. It's something different in the sci-fi world. It's good to see a independent filmmaker have some success with this type of movie. Like I said at the beginning, it was made for 30 million and it did really well at the cinema. You know, $210 million. I think it's had some mixed reviews critically, but all in all, when I talk to people about this film, it's generally well liked. So if you have seen it, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. I will be back soon. I'm going to be looking at the Liam Neeson movie Taken from, I think it was 2008. So look out for that, that will be dropping soon. And for a little bit of admin, I am a proud member of the Legion Podcast Network. So go and check out the other shows on there, the other great shows on there. I will leave a promo at the end of this show. And if you need to contact me, the best place is on Facebook, on the Bitesize Cinema Podcast Facebook page. Let me know if there's any films you want me to have a look at on there. And you can find Bitesize Cinema Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, and if you type it into Google, there's other players on the internet where you can find the show. So there you go, guys. Keep it bite-size.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Helming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.